The spring of 2025 has brought a bitter chill for American agriculture, driven by international trade disputes. In early April, China announced a new round of retaliatory tariffs, a significant 34% levy on U.S. exports. This move, scheduled for April 10, 2025, sent shockwaves through our agricultural sector, already reeling from years of market uncertainty. The announcement came as a direct response to Washington's own 34% tariffs on Chinese goods imposed on April 2nd. For those of us on the ground, these pronouncements translate into tangible threats to our survival. The prospect of losing access to a market as vast as China's is terrifying. Many farmers, particularly in states reliant on China, began bracing for immediate financial consequences. The recent announcement of new tariffs is the latest chapter in a protracted US-China trade war. This trade war has been marked by a series of tit-for-tat measures, with each side trying to outdo the other. This conflict, which escalated under the Trump administration, has seen both nations implement waves of tariffs, creating a volatile trading environment. The tariffs have affected a wide range of industries from technology to agriculture and have had far-reaching economic consequences. The initial premise was to address perceived unfair trade practices by China and reduce the trade deficit. However, the measures have led to increased costs for businesses and consumers alike. However, the agricultural sector quickly found itself on the front lines, bearing the brunt of retaliatory measures. American farmers, who rely heavily on exports to China, have been particularly hard hit. China, a colossal importer of American agricultural products, particularly soybeans, pork, and grains, targeted these sectors to exert maximum pressure on the U.S. government. The impact on American farmers has been devastating, with many struggling to stay afloat. Each new U.S. tariff announcement on Chinese goods was predictably met with a swift response from Beijing. This back and forth has created an atmosphere of uncertainty and tension. The 34% tariffs announced by the U.S. on April 2, 2025, were followed by China's own 34% retaliatory tariffs on April 4. These measures have only served to deepen the divide between the two economic giants. This cycle of escalation has eroded trust and made long-term planning virtually impossible for American farmers. The uncertainty has led to decreased investment and a sense of despair among those in the agricultural sector. The trade war has transformed us into unwilling participants in a high-stakes international confrontation. The stakes are incredibly high and the outcomes are uncertain. The initial hope that these disputes would be resolved quickly has faded, replaced by a grim acceptance of a new, unwelcome normal. Farmers are now bracing for a prolonged period of hardship. This ongoing conflict has fundamentally reshaped global agricultural trade flows. The long-term effects are still unfolding, but one thing is clear: the landscape of international trade has been irrevocably altered. The impact of these renewed Chinese tariffs is felt acutely across the United States, especially in states like Washington, where the economy is heavily reliant on exports. For Washington, China represents the fourth largest export market, a critical outlet for agricultural products and seafood. The state's farmers and fishermen have long depended on this trade relationship to sustain their livelihoods. The announcement in early April 2025 that China would impose a 34% tariff on U.S. exports sent an immediate chill through the state's economy. This sudden policy shift created a wave of anxiety among local producers. Farmers who cultivate everything from apples and cherries to wheat alongside seafood producers found themselves staring into an abyss of uncertainty. The potential financial losses loomed large. The news from Beijing confirmed the worst fears of many in Washington's agricultural sector. The tariffs threatened to disrupt the delicate balance of supply and demand that these industries rely on. The state's agricultural industry, a cornerstone of its economy, was bracing for a massive impact. The ripple effects were expected to be felt not just locally, but across the nation. The immediate aftermath saw a tangible slowdown in activity, with fishing boats remaining docked as the industry tried to assess the damage. The uncertainty was palpable. This visible halt in operations symbolized the broader paralysis gripping export-oriented sectors. The future of many small and large businesses now hangs in the balance as they navigate this challenging economic landscape. While American farmers grapple with Chinese tariffs, struggling to find new markets for their crops, a different story is unfolding in South America, where the agricultural landscape is thriving. Brazil has emerged as a primary beneficiary of the US-China trade dispute, capitalizing on the opportunity to expand its soybean production, filling the void left by American soybeans and increasing its exports significantly. As U.S. soybeans became subject to significant Chinese tariffs, making them less competitive in the global market, Chinese buyers turned to Brazil, seeking a reliable and cost-effective alternative. This shift has fundamentally altered the global soybean trade, reshaping a market once heavily influenced by American production. The American dominance in soybean exports has waned, giving way to a new leader. The result is a booming agricultural sector in Brazil, with farmers reaping the benefits of increased demand, directly fueled by the trade tensions and the strategic shift in global trade dynamics. Brazil now accounts for roughly 70% of China's soybean imports, a staggering figure that underscores its new dominance. This dominance is attributed to the tariff differential, competitive pricing, and record harvests, making Brazilian soybeans highly attractive. The US-China trade war inadvertently created a golden opportunity for Brazil to expand its market share in China, solidifying its position. By 2023 and into 2024, Brazil's dominance was firmly established, with no signs of slowing down. Brazil's dominance was firmly established, making it difficult for US farmers to regain lost ground. The challenges faced by American farmers are immense, as they struggle to compete with Brazil's growing influence. The infrastructure and trade relationships cemented between China and Brazil represent a long-term challenge for American agriculture, one that will require significant effort to overcome. Promises unfulfilled. Farmers' frustration with trade deal failures. A significant source of frustration among American farmers stems from the consistent failure of trade deals to deliver their promised benefits. The Phase 1 trade deal, signed during the Trump administration in 2020, included commitments from China to increase its purchases of U.S. agricultural products. However, the reality has fallen far short, leaving farmers feeling betrayed. The data overwhelmingly indicate that China did not meet the ambitious purchase targets outlined in the 2020 deal. This failure has had a profound psychological impact on the farming community, adding disillusionment to economic hardship. Farmers like Ron Heck and Dan Hennebrey have publicly expressed their deep frustration over these unresolved trade issues. The persistent gap between the rhetoric surrounding trade deals and the reality experienced on the farm has created a chasm of distrust. The silence from D.C., a government unresponsive to rural cries. A troubling sentiment echoing across America's agricultural heartland is the feeling that Washington, D.C. remains largely silent to the escalating crisis faced by its farmers. As Chinese tariffs bite deeper, the calls for decisive action from the federal government have grown louder. The recent tariff pause announced in May 2025 while offering temporary relief is seen as a superficial gesture. Farmers observe that while their livelihoods are on the line, the broader strategic objectives of the trade war take precedence. There is a yearning for a more robust and sustained advocacy from Washington. Lingering shadows, past policies, and their enduring impact. The current crisis faced by U.S. farmers is deeply intertwined with past policies and trade strategies. The aggressive trade stance adopted by the Trump administration reshaped America's trade relationships and set the stage for much of the current turmoil. One significant policy from that era was the imposition of a 10% universal tariff on all imports. Such policies have unintended consequences, and for agriculture this has meant disrupted supply chains and increased input costs. The legacy of these policies is a more fragmented and contentious global trading system. The current bitter reality: economic hardship across America's heartland. As we stand in late May 2025, the economic reality for American farmers is undeniably bitter. Years of trade disputes, volatile commodity prices, and rising input costs have culminated in intense financial pressure. The optimism that might have flickered with news of a temporary tariff pause has been quickly dampened by the hard facts on the ground. U.S. agricultural products, especially soybeans, remain at a disadvantage in the Chinese market due to persistent tariffs. This situation translates directly into reduced incomes, mounting debt, and profound uncertainty for farming families. The cumulative effect of these pressures is a palpable sense of economic hardship spreading through rural communities. The frustration is compounded by the knowledge that these difficulties are largely driven by political decisions and international trade disputes. An uncertain horizon, the precarious future of U.S. agriculture. Looking towards the horizon from late May 2025, the future for U.S. agriculture appears shrouded in uncertainty. The immediate challenges posed by Chinese tariffs and the ongoing trade war are immense. The reliance on volatile export markets and increasing global competition contribute to a precarious outlook. Farmers are resilient, but the current pressures are testing that resilience to its limit. The unresolved U.S.-China trade dispute remains the most significant cloud overhead. The recent tariff pause failed to address the core issues, leaving farmers in a state of high anxiety. The path forward is unclear, and for many American farmers, the future brings a renewed sense of apprehension about their land, livelihoods, and legacy.